Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Madhacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param. Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. We begin today on the verse, we are still on the verse 46, page 69 of the ebook. During sleep, an experientially pure, blissful consciousness. During sleep, I am experientially pure, blissful consciousness until the subtle body becomes active and thoughts and emotions and transactions begin. So in sleep, we know we experience a sort of ananda. We feel good, we enjoy. It's called like ananda maya kosha, the state of fullness and lack of duality and so on. So we experience that. And then the subtle body comes into play, producing thoughts, dream thoughts or awakened thoughts, and immediately we are back into the transaction world. And then similarly, Maya Ishvara appeared. Before Maya Ishvara appeared, consciousness exists in its blissfulness, pure state, let's say. So it's similar. It is a comparison, an analogy between the blissfulness that the Jiva Atma experience compared to the blissfulness of consciousness in the absence of Maya. So in the absence of Maya, consciousness in its spirit existence is present. All know that consciousness is always pure and it's always blissful, but somehow it happens to appear as the Jiva Atma that does not always feel blissful. Here and there we feel blissful. In deep sleep we do feel blissful, but unfortunately we need to get up and live our lives. we do our lives because we want to catch some blissfulness here and there. So that was a passage that we looked. We have Ishvara sleep, which is pralaya, and then we have the Jiva Atma sleep, which is laya. In both cases, there is a resolution of the world of the Jiva resolves into laya, which is a deep sleep, and then the world of Maya resolves into pralaya, which is, let's say Maya got tired and went to sleep, okay? Self-knowledge is difficult in the following paragraph. It's difficult because we always experience pure consciousness associated with objects which attract or repel us and cause us to ignore the self. There are two things there. Excuse me. There are two things in that phrase, in that statement. One is that consciousness is difficult to be realized because we always experience consciousness first and the objects second, and the objects, they seem to, to superimpose themselves or I would say obscure consciousness, because now consciousness is doing its job of shining its light and reveal the objects, and then consciousness gets caught up with illumining and experience the object, as if consciousness becomes somehow a little bit deluded about its full and whole complete nature. So of course this consciousness that associates with objects, it refers to the Jivatma. The Jivatma is the agent that is going to interact with the object. So consciousness is going to appear to be reflected as the Jiva, and then within the Jiva, it's going to illumine, and then the Jiva Atma, which fundamentally is Paramatma, is going to be attracted or repelled to the objects that it illumines, and then the Jiva Atma not only ignores the self, but it suffers of another condition, which is unfortunate, because not only I'm missing reality here, which is my complete and full and blissful light, I'm missing that, but I'm caught up with the objects, and I get involved, and I developed ragas and diversions, attractions and, and aversions, So not only I miss myself, but I get caught up with likes and dislikes, and then I'm trapped in samsara. So there are two problems there. One is missing your real nature, and another is getting really involved with the objects and then developing ragas and diversions. And in doing so, I'm paying full attention to the objects, and I'm fully trapped in samsara. Which means to say that I only do that because I am deceived by mind, and I take duality, and I take the objects to be reality, duality to be reality, and I take it that the objects are there so that I can reestablish my fullness again and my completion through the objects. So that's the whole trick there is, no? During sleep, I am unqualified awareness. Yeah? I am bliss, samana chit. No? Consciousness is there, but it is like there is a sameness. I am unqualified. There are no thoughts. Thoughts are going to create differentiations in awareness, divisions and duality. During sleep, I am experiencing this unqualified or undifferentiated ocean of awareness, which is blissful. Is samana consciousness, samana chit. But when we wake up, immediately I become qualified or differentiated awareness. So awareness is going to appear with one modification, which is I am, and then the objects that appear within my field of experience. So in sleep, I am unqualified and I'm good, and then I become qualified as I am, Vishesha Chit, and then immediately I am in duality, transacting as I was designed for. I was designed to experience duality, and I was designed to experience the world. When I'm asked, how are you? Your first words are, I am, after which the I is qualified by various other words. Experiential bliss is bounded because it begins and ends. So there are a few sentences around there without much elaboration. So we know that we know what is unqualified or unmodified consciousness. Unmodified consciousness, it feels very good because we experience our, let's say, we experience a non-dual nature of the self with a slight modification, which is the appearance of pranya jiva, but it still experience its non-dual nature because there is not really a substantial I in the world. It does not really come into play. It feels blissful. It feels very, very pleasant to sleep. So I am there and I am experiencing my nature, which is undifferentiated or unqualified. And then when I wake up, I appear and the world appear before me. So that much we understood. That's why we appreciate the deep sleep. And that's how we go about appreciating our waking state, because we can develop good attitudes, as we become a good karma yogi, and we play by the rules, and then we take life as a school, in which we can learn and grow. Huh? So we don't want to depend on those unqualified moments of consciousness in deep sleep. So we want to start, living through this qualified aspect of consciousness as I am, but with a certain mental, intellectual quality, that I can appreciate the world and I can interact the world and not totally disturbed by desires and aversions, my ragas and dveshas. So I want to find balance. I want to find equanimity. I need to become spiritually wise so that I can enjoy my awakened state in spite of this duality, I and the world, because we understood, we became wiser, spiritually wiser. Yeah. So when we are asked, how are you? Our first word is I am. So I am is common to all. Everybody is I am. So the self, I am that I am, that expression. So I am is there. And this I am is the same to all. I am is I exist. I am sat. And I know that I am sat. I'm conscious that I am. I am and I know that I am. Huh? So everybody is I am, the first word. But if we are asked to introduce ourselves, we need to add our qualifications. I am male, I'm female, I'm rich, I'm poor, I'm black, I'm white, and so on. I'm an engineer, I'm that. So all of these modifications or qualifications, are going to define myself as a body-mind construct. This is something that is unavoidable because we live in this world and we have to present ourselves by our qualifications, So what are my attributes, my qualifications, my qualities and my profession, and so on, my talents. So everybody is going to introduce oneself. Because we live in Mithya, we bring those qualifications which belong to Mithya to define this I am. But deep inside, we need to hold the knowledge and keep the knowledge that I am is my true nature as that I am. You understand? I am that I am. I am consciousness, but transacting with the world, I'm saying, I am Mr. So-and-so, and I have a date of birth and so on. Yeah. And then here the commentator, or I think James says, experiential bliss is bondage because it begins, it ends. So I don't know in which context that was brought in there. We know that bliss is good, and the experiential bliss is good as well, as long as we do not develop attachment and dependence to this experiential bliss. And there is another sort of bliss, which is Jana Bliss, let's say, is a bliss which is originate from my understanding, my firm understanding of my true nature as the real bliss, not the reflection of the real bliss. What is the bliss? The bliss is my full non-dual nature, which is the only reality, which is unaffected by any experience. So this is the ultimate bliss. And the understanding of this nature makes one live through one's field of interaction with a sense of completion, with a sense of satisfaction, with a sense of immunity, a sense of, self-contention, or and so on. So experiential bliss is bondage because it begins and ends, and experiential bliss is bondage because it becomes a vasana, a desire for more. But the understanding of my nature as Ananda is going to naturally produce a bliss and a sense of bliss, which is still going to be modifying priya, moda, and pramoda, different levels of bliss according to our mental state, But the knowledge is here the knowledge is properly established, and then we keep experiencing a certain bliss as a byproduct of the self-knowledge, as a bonus of the self-knowledge. The real bliss is the knowledge in regards to my true nature. The secondary bliss, which is experiential, it can be gained by deep sleep or nirvikalpa samadhi, or any small samadhis during the day when the mind is properly resolved by gains, by succeeding with things. But it can be also experienced on different degrees, because the three energies, they are always modifying. But generally speaking, it's experienced because of the knowledge which is there, producing that stable, experience of satisfaction in spite of the ups and downs of our experiences. Anything else? Can we move on to Mr. Maya? My throat is giving me trouble. It's raining so much here. I have been taking rain today. The nature of Maya. The Upanishads make a seemingly contradictory statements, make some seemingly apparent contradictory statements. They say that consciousness is, sometimes it says consciousness is the cause of the universe, the cause of the material world. And in other instances, it says that consciousness is not the cause of the material world. In Chandogya, it says that from existence, the 5 elements are created. It does not discuss Maya. So Vidyaranya adds the following 12 verses on Maya, since it's not possible to get the universe from pure existence, consciousness, without an agent that is going to project this cosmos, this universe. No? Why? Because pure consciousness is not an agent. Pure consciousness is not a doer. It's a karta. No? And it cannot do anything to transform itself into the world as we know. No? So the world happens. And why there is this apparent contradiction? Because when we bring Maya into the equation, and then things are much more clear, and then we can understand consciousness as being actionless and therefore unable to produce anything, to cause anything, to modify itself, and so on. It is one without a second. There is nothing there. There is no modification within itself. Therefore, there is no possibility of getting 1 + 1 and make something else. If there was a modification, we say consciousness, it would be an inclusion, an attribute, a part of consciousness, and then consciousness would not be what it is. And we know from our very experience that our true nature is that way. Our true nature is this conscious light, which never modifies and never does anything, but without it, all the actions, all the activities, all the dynamics of the universe are not possible, because consciousness is there. So that consciousness, who has created the world? Is Maya, but Maya cannot create it alone. So who is fundamentally create? Where is the world coming from? The universe is coming from where? It's coming from consciousness, although consciousness does not do a thing. So there is not really contradiction. If you take the words literally, you will say consciousness does not, but it does. It does how? Without doing anything. Oh, but it's not possible. It is possible. You just provide the space. You just provide the existence. You just provide, the conscious, the intelligence, which is the nature, the chitta nature of Brahman. And then Maya does the job. So who is doing the job? Maya or consciousness? Consciousness is not into doing anything, but consciousness, is everything is coming from consciousness. It's difficult for the mind to understand that consciousness is really the cause, the causeless cause of the universe, although consciousness is a karta, does not do anything, The space is causing all the other elements in the universe within itself, because it's boring, its attributes, its qualities to the following, elements. And then Ishvara keeps mixing up this original primary elements and creating other chemical and physical and all sorts of elements and configurations. And then we have the universe. Yeah? So space has done anything? No, that's why we enjoy space. Space is very close to consciousness. It's in its very presence, everything takes place, and space is not doing anything, It just accommodates everything. Yeah? And it does something. It says that space has one attribute, which is sound. Out of space, there is a fundamental sound, which the sound, some say Om, which is the original thought, the original knowledge that contains the entire intelligence and knowledge of the entire universe, all universe. But anyhow, Vidyaranya is going to present Mr. Maya to solve this problem so that we understand that although consciousness is the cause of the material world, it cannot really do anything because it is a karta. Therefore, it does produce the world by the power of Maya. And then we hope we're going to get a better understanding between this possible, supposed relationship between Brahman or consciousness and Maya, because every time we try hard to understand this relationship, and in the end we scratch our head and say, okay, never mind, the scriptures say that it's not comprehensible, intellectually comprehensible, really, Verse 47, as you cannot separate fire and its power to burn, there is a power called Maya Shakti. In awareness, or again, apparent control, there is a power in awareness. So awareness, and then awareness has something to it. There is an attribute, a quality. No, it's not really like that, because awareness is a partless whole. There is nothing, there is no inclusion to it. But there is a power, and this power is called Maya Shakti, which exists within awareness, but it's not part of awareness, and yet is totally dependent on awareness, okay? This power cannot be known objectively and clearly or directly, but can be understood by inference, by observing its effects, okay? So here, the verse is very beautiful, and it presents the fire and its power to burn, and to cook food and so on. So we have the fire and its heat power, How can we separate the heat from fire? Yeah. So, and where is the heat coming from? Because when we look into the fire, because we see the form of fire and so on, we see that fire is a fire. Heat is somehow a byproduct or something that happens, It cannot be separated, but the heat is not the fire, even though it comes from the fire, but it's not the fire. You understand? And much less we cannot say that the fire is the heat. The fire is the source of the heat. You understand? So those are very subtle analogies between these phenomena that can help us to understand a little bit better the relationship between consciousness and Maya. You understand? So this power, fire, and its power to burn cannot be separated. In fact, fire has two properties. There are two natures to fire, which is heat and light. So we cannot separate light from fire, right? It's even more cool, this one. So when you look at the fire, another nature of fire is light. Yeah? So how can we separate light from the fire? But we cannot say that they are the same. And we cannot say that the fire depends on the light. We know that the light depends on the fire. And we know that light is not a part of the fire. It's just an intrinsic attribute or property of the fire. You understand? So these are all nice analogies for us to contemplate and understand Maya. And it says that it cannot be known directly, Maya, meaning to say it's very hard to understand objectively. Maya directly means say objective. Okay, what is Maya? Okay, Maya is before Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagat. Okay, it's before the cosmos. There is something. But I thought it was consciousness. No, there is consciousness, but there is a fundamental, a fundamental thing or energy. In fact, it's called Prakriti. It's fundamental. Out of that Maya, fundamental, subtle, super subtle energy, Sattva is developed. Sattva emerged, Sattva Guna, and then the other two energies. And then out of these three energies that comes or exists within this original Prakriti, and then comes the subtle elements. So we know that Maya is there, but it's so subtle, it's subtler than the three gunas. You understand? And how can we objectify? How can we really directly, understanding it in a very clear and objective way if it's the cause of the universe? We can understand much better consciousness. Consciousness is easy to be understood. It's the cause of Maya, is the cause of everything, Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagat. We can understand better consciousness, although consciousness is subtler than Maya and can never be objectified. But why can we understand better consciousness and having such a hard time to understand Maya? Because we are that consciousness. We experience, we are living proof of Chit, which is the nature, one of the natures of Brahman, of consciousness. You understand? So we don't have much of a problem to understand consciousness in a clear manner, provided we know that my understand is that consciousness cannot be known objectively, but I can know consciousness, firsthand as the subject shining in my intellect. So we don't have much trouble. That's why it's possible to have a clear and firm knowledge in regards to consciousness as our very nature. But Maya is there in between. Maya is in between the world and consciousness. It's what's causing the world, and we cannot really objectify because it is already something which is integral part of Mithya, but it's very subtle. But the scriptures gives us good hints that helps us to get a certain understanding of Maya. And the way we do that is by inferential knowledge. It's not by direct perception or understanding or objectification, conceptualization through the five senses, but it's through inference. There is nothing wrong with this inferential knowledge. Most of our scientific, most if not all scientific knowledge is inferential, is based on perception, but it is inferential. So Maya, we don't have any perception of Maya, but we can infer its existence. And because we see the world, and nothing, the world cannot come from nothing. In fact, nothing can come from nothing. In fact, nothing cannot exist, because nothing means to say non-existence. You understand? So this universe cannot come from nothing. It can only come from something. But this something is not consciousness, okay? So they call the people from the other spiritual philosophies and structures, religious structures, they call us the Mayavadas, or Mayavadas, I think. the people who brought Maya and believe in Maya. So we don't believe blindly in Maya. So we just follow the logic presented by this revealed body of knowledge. And then we come to the conclusion, yes, of course, the universe must come from something. It exists, but Satchit is not an agent to produce the universe. Something must be there originally, in between. We say that it's in between the world and between consciousness, but I rather say that it's Maya not being Satya must be an integral part of Mithya. So it's the seed of Mithya. Although the seed of Mithya is better visualized as Ishvara, which is the knowledge of the universe, So let's see where it goes here. Maya cannot be separated from consciousness. The same way you cannot separate the power of fire, the power of fire to burn from the fire, and you cannot separate the power to illumine of the fire from the fire. So you cannot separate. They look like different things, but they cannot be separated. It is something as a power inherent, to something else. So we cannot separate the power to illumine from the fire. Because existence has no beginning, Maya has no beginning. So another concept there. We know that consciousness is beginningless. And there is a power which is closely associated to consciousness, but it's not a part of consciousness. Consciousness is a partless, one without a second. It's whole, meaning to say there are no something else that is a part of it that is going to add up to it. No. So there is something which is Maya, which being so closely associated with consciousness, but yet not a part of consciousness, an integral part of consciousness, but it's there as the light is to the fire, there is Maya to consciousness, you understand? They are very intimate associated, but they are not really one part of that. It's as if Maya was something that, emanates, but it's not really part of consciousness. The same way the light emanates from the fire, but the fire is complete in its own, you understand? But it has something, but it's even a little bit different because the power to illumine the light is an attribute of the fire. And as we know, consciousness is said to be attributeless, which puts us in a situation, okay, and then if it has no attribute, why? Because if there is attribute, it's not something without any inclusion. Attribute is already an inclusion. It is something within something with myself, consciousness. So those subtleties, to get to understand Maya helps us to sharpen, if nothing more, our intellect. You cannot separate the power of fire to illumine from the fire because existence has no beginning. And then Maya, which is so closely intimate to consciousness, Maya must have no beginning as well. So there is no such a thing as, oh, the fire is here and the fire is really, really dark, okay? And then one day, bah, the fire became luminous. No. So if there is an intimate relationship between light and the fire, it must be inherent to the fire, although it's not a part of the fire, okay? So Maya is very closely intimate. Consciousness is beginningless, as we know, and then Maya must be beginningless as well, okay? It's something that is always there, and sometimes manifest in the universe, sometimes not manifest in the universe, but it is as beginningless. And because Maya has no beginning, it means to say that Ishvara is beginningless, and the world is beginningless, and Jiva is beginningless. Therefore, the notion of the eternal Jiva, the beginningless Jiva, Jiva, that which has always existed, okay? And when it has always existed, it exists beyond time. It's not that it has always existed to be seen, the manifestation, no, it's beyond time. Time is every time there is a beginning of the universe, and then if we have the means, we're going to measure it, okay? But the Jiva exists even through the dissolution of the universe. And we don't know which one was the universal number one, because there is no such a thing. You understand? The same way we don't know which was the number one egg that brought about the chicken. No? Now it's cyclical. It does not have a beginning. So Maya has no beginning. Ishvara, Jiva, Jagat has no beginning. Maya and existence are one. Maya and consciousness are one, but they are not the same. So the light and the fire is kind of one, but they are not the same. So Maya and consciousness are one, but they are not the same. So Maya has its existence within Brahman consciousness and depends its existence. There is a word that is being used often in Vedanta is Maya gets its existence or borrows its existence from consciousness. Consciousness does not even lend its existence. Maya goes there and grabs it because consciousness does not have the power, not even to lend something. You understand? It's just, it is there, and then things happen because of its mere existence, presence. Therefore, Maya and existence, consciousness are not the same, but they are one, okay? Because Maya is invisible, it cannot be seen. Okay, I would say like, because Maya is the most subtle aspect of Mithya, Maya, because there are so many things that are invisible. I mean, thoughts are invisible, but we can objectify and know our thoughts. So Maya is much more than invisible, is the most subtle factor in Mithya. Therefore, it is very difficult to be understood and objectified on an objective manner, to understand it objectively, okay? We cannot really say, okay, what is Maya? Maya, conceptually, Maya is Maya is so subtle, that we can't really perceive it, through the mind, through the intellect. The intellect has a hard time to perceive, to see Maya, to understand Maya. That's what it means. Maya is so subtle that it's almost incomprehensible to the human intellect. It cannot see means the intellect cannot see. Knowledge, understanding cannot see. We need the help of a different vision, a different pramana, which is the help of the scriptures on Maya that gives us some hints. And then side by side with those hints, it says, take it easy because it's very difficult to understand intellectually. Maya is very difficult to be understood and seen, but it can be inferred. It can be understood by inference, by observing its effects, right? Just as one can infer the existence of grandparents from the existence of one of parents, just as one can exist the one of those old watch that used to be handmade, we can infer the existence of, this watch is really, how you say, antique. It's an antique. It's 500 years old watch, let's say, if there is such a thing. So when you see a watch like that in a museum, museum, I forgot how to say that word. And then you immediately you're going to infer that there was a watchmaker. A watchmaker was there 500 years ago because this is inference. So we know. Have you ever thought that we can know by inference who was in our I would say genetic tree? I forgot the general we can go back to the beginning of the United States. Lynn was born in the United States. We can go back those 300 years, 400 years, and then Lynn discovers who was the first man and woman she is related to, the grandparents. We can know that. It's difficult to trace it back, but by inference, we can know it even without needing to trace it. You say, oh yes, my grandparents were here somewhere around that century, somehow, possibly. So inference is a very valid means of knowledge, as we know, and we need to infer Maya by its effect. One cannot say that Maya is nothing because nothing is an idea, which is itself an effect of Maya. Oh, no, everything comes from Maya. And then what is Maya? Maya is emptiness. Nothingness is space. Space is not Maya. Space is a byproduct of Maya. Nothingness is an effect of Maya. Nothingness is much associated to space. We cannot say that Maya is space or nothing, An effect cannot be identical with its cause because the cause is subtler than effect. So we cannot have an effect, which is the universe, identical its cause, because the cause is always subtler. So we see the way things are structured in this universe, the macrocosm, causal, subtle, and manifest physical universe. So where everything is coming from the macrocosm, causal body of the universe. Likewise, with the Jiva, the individual soul, in the micro, we have our causal body. So the causal is so subtle. In our very experience of life, we have difficult to understand our causal body objectively because of its subtlety. So the very intellect we try to understand our causal body is a byproduct of our causal body. How can the fact understand its cause? How can it objectify its cause? It would be better to say, how can an effect objectify? Because it comes from there. We come from consciousness. We come from this power of mind. The cause is always subtler than the effect. Maya is neither non-existence. This is a big one. This is a beautiful statement. Maya is neither asat, which means to say non-existent. It is a totally different category. We say that Maya is not non-existence and it's not existence, sat. Okay, it's something in between. Okay. It's something altogether different. That's why we need to take Maya and put him in the same bag of Mithya, labeled Mithya. Mithya is that which is not existent, it's not non-existent, but it's something that apparently existent, which is Mithya, that which exists as a mirage, as a superimposition of names, colors, and forms, or superimposition of thoughts and configurations of the elements. The verse is meant to address the doubts of materialists who believe that unless something is perceivable, it does not exist. If there were a cause for nothingness, it would have to be different from its effect. So if there were a cause for nothingness, it would have to be different from its effect. So there is a cause for nothingness, and then the cause for nothingness would have to be what? Different from its effect. So if the effect is nothingness, so how can something produce nothingness? And how can nothingness come from nothingness? That's the point here. If there were a cause for nothingness, nothingness come from something, it will have to be different from nothingness. So how can something that is can produce something that is not? Huh? How can be something that exists? Because the effect must be different than its cause. If the effect is nothingness, and then something that is must be there to cause non-existence. So existence cannot cause non-existence, and non-existence cannot cause non-existence, because non-existence does not cause anything. The fact is that there is no such a thing as non-existence. But Maya cannot be nothing because the fact, the world exists. So we know that Maya is not space. Maya cannot be emptiness or the void, but because it produced the physical material universe, therefore it cannot be nothingness. Nothingness cannot produce anything, but if anything, it would produce more of nothingness. You can only get an existent something from an existent something, not from nothing. You get an existence from an existence. From nothing, we don't get anything. So Maya is something because it produced something, such as the universe, the physical, material, manifest universe, apparent universe, of course. You can only get an existent something from an existent something, never from nothing. So Maya is something, but it is a something unlike anything else. Why? Because it never exists. It neither exists nor non-exists. It's something that apparently is. You know why I'm pointing to that? Because Maya is the beginning of Mithya. It is, but it's not. It exists as not Sat and not as asat. What is an example of asat? Asat is something that absolutely does not exist, like the horns of a butterfly or something like that. So Maya is not non-existent, and it's not existent. It's an appearance that occurs within consciousness that produces the world. It's an appearance. It's his appearance. An appearance, because it has its apparent nature, it can produce a world that can only be an apparent world. You understand? It's all within Mithya, an apparent reality. Maya is something, but it isn't something unlike anything else. It is unlike existence, and it is not unlike it isn't like the world. Reality is non-dual consciousness. That's the only reality. Yet we experience a world. Consciousness cannot cause the world because it's not an agent. It's not an agent. Maya is an agent factor, that's going to produce something. Maya, consciousness cannot. The world cannot cause itself either. So matter cannot cause itself either. So matter needs to find its cause in something which is subtler than matter/energy. So it happens in science that people that think that matter originates in energy, but they don't understand that energy and matter are the same thing. It's just a question of grossification, and both are inert. You understand? So inert matter, inert energy cannot produce the universe. So something else brought about matter, and then matter modifying and evolving moment to moment gives the impression to us that it is self-contained and it's producing. No, it's not producing. It is just moving along and adjusting, because in nature, everything is in a flux of modification constantly from moment to moment. No? But the world, the matter cannot self-create itself. So the world where I am, reality is non-dual, yet we experience the world. Consciousness cannot cause the world because it's not an agent. The world cannot cause itself because it is inert. It is matter. So whatever causes the world, it must be different from both consciousness and the world. Now, very nice logic. We have fundamentally, we have two factors in the universe. One is matter, and the other is consciousness or spirit. No, matter and spirit. So we see our human experience that there is this element of spirit or consciousness, and then there is our physical, subtle and gross physical aspect, which is the body-mind construct. So we know that we have those two aspects. We have consciousness and we have matter, subtle and gross matter, making up what we call the body-mind construct. So we have these two elements, but this spirit did not bring about this body-mind construct. So what brought about this body-mind construct is something in between. It is different from both consciousness and the world. So it's not matter creating the world, and it's not really consciousness, but there is something that causes it, which is different from the spirit or consciousness and matter, the universe. A person's talents, this is a nice analogy. It says that a person's talents cannot be separate from the person itself. So the heat and the light of the fire cannot be separate from the fire. So likewise, we have certain talents that cannot be separate from us. But we are not our talents. We are free and independent from our talent. Do you agree about that? We have some talent. Sometimes we have talents that remains suppressed because due to some karmic circumstance, we don't have the opportunity to experience it. You understand? So we are not our talents. The talents exist within me. They're no separate than me. I'm free and independent from my talents. And my talents can produce certain things. I can be, manifesting certain work, certain things through my talents. But I am totally free and independent from my talent. My talent is so intimate connect to me, they depend on me. But I am independent of my talents. So the talent is a nice way to understand this relationship between consciousness and Maya. Maya, the amazing power that creates the universe, is non-separate from consciousness, but it does not stand alone either. So it's not separate from consciousness. It's not separate, but at the same time, it does not stand alone either. It's exactly like our talents, It does not stand on its own, it depends on us. At the same time, it's not separate from us. It's very subtle, very beautiful logic to help us to understand this relationship. Whatever existence Maya enjoys is borrowed from awareness. again, borrowed. It's getting it from awareness. It's awareness does not really give it or lend it. It's just consciousness is supplying. Consciousness is supplying existence to Maya. Whatever existence Maya enjoys is supplied by awareness, consciousness. It is a sort of upadhi. It apparently qualify and modify or conceal awareness. So this Maya is the most subtle upadhi of consciousness. So what is upadhi? Upadhi is some modifications or qualifications that belongs to something that somehow they appear to be transferred through something else. So Maya has these qualifications, these qualities, these modifications, this talent, to project the universe, okay? And it's so closely intimate to consciousness that this power of Maya somehow appears as if transferred to consciousness, as if consciousness is projecting and creating the world. It is the most primordial upadhi of consciousness. It appears as transferring or concealing consciousness. Is Maya's the first manifestation coming out of consciousness. Existence does not borrow existence because it already exists. So existence, consciousness, is self-contained. It means to say it itself exists. So we exist, but are we self-existent? Yes and no. Now, as a Jiva, the body-mind construct in my substantial nature, I'm not self-existing because I owe my existence to consciousness. Consciousness is, supply me with existence, okay? But if I take myself to be of the nature of consciousness alone, and then I can say, yes, I am self-existent because I'm not the body-mind. I am limitless consciousness. Existence does not borrow existence. Why? How can existence get existence from something else if it's already existing? Simple philosophical arguments, but clear. So existence. So how it would borrow existence if it is already existing as the very source of existence that supplies existence to what? To the objects, and including the Jiva object as well. Everything existence because we are blessed with Brahman's existence. And a non-existent thing cannot borrow existence. So if we say, okay, existence does not borrow or does not require a supply of existence from another source because it is already self-existing. It's self-contained with its own existence, And then we can say, okay, it already exists, it's self-contained, it has its limitless nature of existence. And then how about non-existence? Because non-existence is there, objecting existence. So, and then the commentator here says the non-existent thing cannot borrow existence because it does not exist. So if consciousness is self-contained, does not require existence from anything, then don't come to me to tell me that consciousness gets their existence from the void, from non-existence, because this is a discussion about what is the ultimate reality. Some people believe that the non-existence, the void, emptiness, you understand? Out of the emptiness comes consciousness, existence, and everything. We say, no, there is no such a thing as non-existence as the ultimate reality, because nothing can come out of non-existence. Non-existent thing cannot concede. supply existence to anything, because the nature of non-existence is non-existence. And there is no such a thing as non-existence to begin with, because it does not exist. So whatever borrows existence must be something else altogether. So whatsoever borrows existence from consciousness must be something other than consciousness. Therefore, Mr. Maya is there, receiving or borrowing or take advantage or take advantage, it's just benefiting from existence of Brahman, and then projecting and creating the world, So Maya kind of exists, although we have established that it neither exists nor does not exist, apparently exists, because Maya is the beginning of Mithya, that which exists but as an appearance. Okay? I don't know if you have enjoyed this conversation. We're going to have to go through more of this Maya, and next week maybe my voice will be better and I will be maybe in a better shape. I'm a bit tired today. And we leave it for next Monday, the same time, the same Panchadasi channel on the same Mithya, Arrivederci. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, my friends. See you next time. Big hug. Arrivederci.
Thanks, Arlinda. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.